Reign of Shadows, Chapter 10. At the sight of Artaka, the chamber went silent. He stood at least 10 feet tall. His armor was grey-green and covered in runes carved at the beginning of time. His mask was the most ornate anyone had ever seen. More than just a kanoe, it was a true work of art. The metallic protodermis from which it was forged was arranged in intricate patterns and designs, each reflecting one of the many cultures that flourished in the universe. The eye slits were angular and pointed, giving him an air of both wisdom and a vague sense of menace. Artaka stood in the shattered doorway, facing some of the most powerful beings in existence. His stance made it clear he was their equal, if not their superior. His cold eyes fell first on Lewa Nuva. "Your task is done," he said. "Return whence you came." Lewa Nuva stared at Artaka for a moment, then turned without a word and started to exit, only to be blocked by the newcomer. "Without the body," said Artaka. Lewa Nuva shrugged. "Payment for services rendered?" "The mind of Lewa Nuva is trapped within your old body, Trencrom, as you well know," Artaka replied. "He deserves better than to suffer a fate meant for you." The mouth of Lewa Nuva smiled, though it was the mind of Trencrom that made it so. "The words come easily to you, Artaka. You chose to live as an exile. I did not." "None of us choose our destiny," Artaka replied, "and none of us can defy it. Go, Trencrom. Have faith Masanui will reward you when all is said and done." Lewa Nuva nodded. "Faith, yes. A drop of water in place of an ocean." Artaka reached out and placed the palm of his right hand on Lewa Nuva's forehead. "It's more than time." The Toa's body spasmed, then dropped to the floor. After a moment, Lewa's eyes opened, and he looked around, dazed. "Where? I was in a cave, in an ever-ugly body, and..." Artaka ignored him. Helrex had advanced up to him, staring up at his masked face, and making no effort to contain her fury. "This is no affair of yours, Artaka. Actions must be taken to contain the threat of Makuta, here and now." "Creation is my essence," Artaka replied, "and you would destroy all that exists. I can't allow that." "You can't stop it either." "But I can." The voice reverberated throughout the chamber. It belonged to Makuta Pterodax. "Oh, who invited him?" muttered Lewa. "Invited me?" asked Pterodax. "As I recall, you are all guests in my home, and you have been most rude and destructive ones. I am afraid I am going to have to ask you to leave." "And if we refuse?" bellowed Axon. "What will you do then, you formless freak?" Pterodax gave a low, mocking laugh. Then he said softly, "Why then, I will have to insist." One instant, Axon, Brutaka, Helrix, Artaka, Mizrix, Tuyet, and two Matoran were inside a half-ruined chamber deep beneath Metronui. The next, they were floating in the airless, icy void of outer space, watching as the robot Makuta commanded soared away from them toward a distant world. "I told you this was a bad idea," said Toa Kongu. "Quiet," hissed Toa Harley. "Is Yoda sure of its information?" asked Nuparu. "As sure as they can be with things as they are," replied Huki. "Then we'd better get to work," said Jella. The 5 surviving Toa Mahri were crouched on the western shore of the island of Zakaz, home to the murderous Skakti race. Ordinarily, it wasn't the sort of place any sane person wanted to visit, racked as it was by a millennia-old civil war. Back when they were Toa Inika, Jala and his team had battled 6 Skakti, the Paraka, and barely escaped with their lives. Their mission here was as simple as it was perilous. The Order had learned that Nektan, a powerful Skakti warlord, had allied with Makuta Pterodax and led his army on a journey south. Now it was vital to find out if any of the other warlords were going to follow his lead. On top of that, there was a mystery to be solved. Following the widespread destruction on Daxia, the sea snakes that were once the evil Paraka had vanished. It had been believed they were just buried in the rubble, but rumours were flying they had been rescued and spirited away to Zakaz. For what purpose, no one could say. To accomplish either of these, they had to get past the Skakti guards on the shore. That was Kongu's job. Using his control of air, he robbed the guards of anything to breathe until they passed out. Once they were down, the Toa Mahri advanced. Their next obstacle was a small encampment of warriors, surrounded by a wall of thick stone. "Want me to bring the wall down?" asked Toahuki. "Just like we planned," nodded Jala. Huki concentrated and extended his power over stone to the wall. The next moment, the rocks began to explode. The alarmed Skakti, thinking they were under attack by another tribe, rushed to their defences. They couldn't spot the enemy. After a few minutes of bombardment, they scaled the rubble and fled into the night. Jala turned to the Toa of Water. "Harley?" "It's this way," she answered, taking the lead. The Toa moved swiftly across the uneven terrain until they reached the mouth of the cave. By now, they could all hear the rushing of water. Harley led them inside, where they saw an underground river. "Perfect," said Nuparu. "The Order says that will take us right into one of the larger ruins," said Harley. "All we have to do is swim." "That again?" asked Huki in mock protest. The Mask of Life had transformed the Toa Inika into water-breathing Toa Mahri not long ago. Then it had changed them again, making them true amphibians. One by one, they dove into the water and began to swim through the cold, dark water. After an hour or so, during which time Nuparu discovered that there were some very nasty fish under Zakaz, they emerged in another cavern. Just beyond the mouth of the cave was a large area of ruins, in which about 500 Skakti were gathered. One, obviously a warlord, was addressing the gathering. "The Brotherhood of Makuta is no more," he bellowed. "The Dark Hunters are a battered ruin. The Toa are scattered and hiding like stone rats. Who is there left for anyone to fear?" "The Skakti!" yelled the crowd in response. "I don't like the sound of this," said Huki. "I think you're about to like it less," said Nuparu. He was crouched down with one hand on the soil. "Something is moving on the ground, maybe 20 bayo from where we are. Something big." "For too long, we have been penned up on this island by the will of the Brotherhood," the warlord continued. "And now, one of their number controls our universe, and believes he controls us as well. But we will show him he is wrong!" "Okay, well, it doesn't sound like he and Pterodax will be playing curly together anytime soon," said Jala. "And I think he's just getting warmed up," said Harley. "Let our salvation now rise!" shouted the warlord. "Here it comes," said Nuparu. Now they could all feel the rumbling underground, and soon they saw what was causing it. A huge tank was rising up in the center of the ruins. One glance, and the Mahri knew all too well what was inside of it. "That's energized protodermis," whispered Jala. "How do they questions later?" said Kongo. "Look at who just joined the party." The Skakti were hauling prisoners toward the tank. One was a Zyglak, the savage race of outcasts known for being virtually invulnerable to the elemental powers of Toa. Next came a Vortex, the crafty race that had spawned the evil Rudaka. And after that, one of the brutish race that served as labourers on Stelt. "This makes no sense," said Harley. "Even if they throw them into the liquid, the three of them might just be destroyed by it. Probably will be. So what's the point?" "None," said Nuparu. Unless somehow they knew those three were destined to transform." "But the only one who could know that would be Pterodax," finished Jella. "They probably don't even know he put this idea into their heads. It's another one of his sick games." "Just got sicker," said Huki. "Or are those not the Paraka I see?" The Toa of Stone was correct. 5 Skakdi were carrying 5 sea snakes, each of the serpents gasping to breathe. At the Warlord's signal, the 3 prisoners and the 5 snakes were thrown into the energized Protodermis tank. So engrossed were the Skakdi that they failed to notice a strange greenish cloud that emerged from the nearby lake, hovered in the air for a moment, and then plunged into the energized Protodermis tank. The liquid began to froth and bubble. The Toa Mahri could see a shape forming in the silver fluid, something monstrous and horrible. "Tell you what," said Kongu, "call me when it's over. I don't think I want to look." "I don't think the Order's going to like this," said Nuparu. "I don't think anyone is," said Jella. And then, before their eyes, a new and terrible form of life began to climb from the tank. To be continued.